It is the Everton Byline, episode 29. We are back here on the Blue Room. I am Matt Jones. Joining me, as ever, is Paddy Boyland. We are both thawed out from last night, Paddy, having been down on the water. I mean, it was cold. I mean, we'll do some deeper analysis, but it was very cold, wasn't it?
It was funny. We had media activities at the Titanic Hotel nearby, both before and after the game. And I'd left my bag there anyway. Walked back into the room, and one person said to me and Chris Beasley from the Echo just walking, "I can actually feel the cold coming off you two." we must have just been like giving up like freezer vibes.
Yeah,
just so bad.
It was ridiculous. One of the people who did the Blue Room podcast last night, I'm not going to name them, had long johns on, and even they were cold.
Oh, that absolutely reeks of Mark Mosey. It's absolutely.
I'm not going to say. But we will be doing some deeper, more insightful analysis on the stadium as the show goes on. We will, of course, look at the Palace win as well. I'm going to have a chat about Kevin Thelwell and his future. But just one of those weeks, Paddy, where it feels like it's been so much news. And just before we start, actually, to go back to last week when we were talking about our former number 28, we talked about Chris Price. And you received an email from Andrew Ellis who said, "Hi, Paddy, just listened to the byline and had to chat about Chris Price. I don't have a huge amount to add to the discussion on him, but I grew up in McGull and went to the same school as him. He was in the year above at Days High School. I think I pronounced that right.
Yeah.
And he was an absolutely gifted ball-playing midfielder. Everyone was no doubt that he would make it as a pro. He seemed destined for it. Unfortunately, injury curtailed his progress and his career didn't go as expected, which was a shame because he was a brilliant prospect. Thanks for all the writing and blues and the podcast. I really enjoy listening to you and Matt." That's lovely. Lovely to hear, Paddy. Thanks very much, Andrew, for getting in touch. I think we felt a little bit guilty that we were sort of, after the show, didn't we? That we were sort of having a joke at Chris Price's expense. But it's great to hear those stories. Obviously, sad that his career didn't get going because of injuries, but lovely to get a bit of background on these players.
I mean, honestly, I'd genuinely not heard of him. Like even some of the obscure ones around the turn of the century, kind of late 90s into the early 2000s, I'd get, but like Chris Price was a completely new name for me, and it was just given off like, you know, Football Manager save where you're kind of 15 seasons in and you start getting kind of these generic regens appearing. So yeah, good to get some information on him. It sounds a little bit like a kind of a teenage prodigy who was just unlucky with injuries, really, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, of all the news we've got this week, and that's where we're starting. But I just wanted to thank Andrew for messaging. Let's start off then. As ever, we are sponsored by the Bridewell. As ever, saw Dom and Fiona last night. They were getting ready to go to the test event, so great to catch up with them. Did them beforehand. But yeah, Bridewell will be loads going on the next few weeks to keep an eye out on the socials for events with former players and stuff like that. Well worth keeping across. If you watch us on YouTube, do hit the little bell to subscribe to us, or leave us a comment. Let us know your thoughts on anything we're going to talk about. Obviously, most presciently, the stadium and what you thought of that if you were there on Monday night. And if you're listening to us, do leave us 5 stars, leave us a comment. All those things help as we look to grow the podcast. And yeah, like I said last week, tell your mates as well if you're enjoying it. We've had lots of people. I know you're speaking to people at the ground last night, Paddy, saying they're enjoying it. So if you're enjoying the content, do share it with your Evertonian friends and in your Evertonian circles. But we'll start with last night, Paddy, because we were both at the test event. Didn't actually see you in the ground. I saw Joe and Chris who were typing for the Echo, and they looked very cold, as we sort of mentioned there. We haven't actually spoken to you about it yet and got your thoughts. And I think I'm right saying you've been in there before in the past. That was your first time going.
Yeah, it was. Like I received a couple of invites before, and for whatever reason, I'd not been able to attend. I think one I was at a meeting in London, and the other was actually while I was on holiday in Morocco. So it wasn't going to be possible to get back for the Monday, as Everton was suggesting. So first experience on Monday night, absolutely loved it. I think it spot on what people are saying around kind of the pictures. Whatever pictures you take, they don't do it justice in the scale, the magnitude of it all. And to be honest, Matt, because it was a first experience, I found it quite overwhelming. And not just overwhelming emotionally, but I just mean there's so much. It's like a sensory overload, isn't it? There's so much to look at and so much to take in. sights and sounds and everything else, that like I came away and my head was just swimming. And like, it's all positive stuff, all really positive stuff in the main. But it was just like, it was a bit of an overload as an experience. I mean, like, my working day started sometime around 4ish with other things we were working on, but we all walked over as kind of a media group and had a look around the South Stand concourse and tried some of the food that was being supplied on the night by various from various kiosks. So that was good fun, and I kind of really impressed with that. But there's so much to kind of see and explore that I think you just get swept away with it all, and almost like I needed to put my head back on this morning and try to make sense of it and write about it and everything else. The one thing that most people probably aren't picking up on is that we were all in the South Stand, but what that meant for media was no desks, no charging points, any of that kind of stuff that we're used to. And there wasn't even Wi-Fi, so you had people trying to like hotspot off their phone while 10,000 or more people are there, and some people had kind of 8:30 deadlines, which is, I mean, hard work, to be fair, in the circumstances. So yeah, a great night. I mean, what did you make of it?
So I think I said on the pod last night, and I've got a piece coming out later on the Echo site about this actually. I was really nervous all day on Sunday thinking about it. And I think it's because, and I think I've said on here a few times, like on the Blue Room, certainly down the years, that I've always been a bit skeptical about the move. And I think there's probably for two reasons. One, which is kind of gone now, is because when we had Mashiri and when we had PSR issues and when we were close to getting relegated, I would always get the train into town past that stadium. And with that as a backdrop, I would think, how on earth are we going to pay for that? And what type of team are we going to be watching in that? And it kind of made me like sad more than anything, like looking at it at times when things were really bad. And obviously, thanks to the Freaking Group, Everton are financially stable now. And thanks to David Moyes, Everton are going to be a Premier League team next season now. But Barrold has gone, admittedly, in the last few weeks. And the other one is just like, I just love Goodison so much. And I love where I sit. I love like the little idiosyncrasies I've been able to craft in my match going routine after, over 20 years ago. And like, I love some of the people who sit by us in the crowd. Obviously, my dad being the main one, but like some of the people you meet and all that. And like, I was just worried on Sunday when I was thinking about it that I was going to kind of walk in and just not get it and not feel it, if that makes sense. And like, it's not to do with anything the club have put out or what it looks like or anything. I think it's just like the thing that makes Goodison great is like the little intangible things and like the way it feels when certain things happen in the ground. And obviously we can't get that yet from Bramley Moore, but I was just worried on something like that I was going to walk in there and think, oh, it's not like this bit's not as good as I thought it was going to be, or the walk up's not great, or the area or whatever. And like, I'm being honest, like it's going there last night really settled my anxieties completely about it all, because I think, and we've seen this over the last few days, like it's being ramped up on social media, and I'm sure we'll get more of this as we go towards moving in properly next season. Opposition fans saying it looks like a out of the box stadium. It looks like a anyone who plays FIFA, like an East Point Arena, like the generic stadium the teams play at, and all this. And you're going to get that, but on anyone who's got those concerns, just wait until you go and you see it, because I think it's one of them that obviously you can see it from miles around and walking up through the city centre, and it's kind of like a blue sort of beacon, isn't it? Like attracting Evertonians, like down on the waterfront where you've got a black sky, certainly overnight. But it's when you get up close, I think, and you see, you mentioned the scale of it there. That is really striking and something that you can't. It's like I always remember, Paddy, this is a mad tangent, but I always remember going to Iceland and taking a picture of these like big waterfalls in Iceland and sending it back home. And I was like, these photos make them look terrible. Like, but they're a massive, like ginormous things in front of us, like natural wonders. And like I remember getting home and saying, oh, they were much better than they looked. It's like that. But then it's all the little things around it as well. So like the fan plaza is a great space. Obviously, you've got pubs and bars right outside, which have been regenerated by this move. And like, I was in Murphy to speak to the owners of that place, and like they're buzzing. Obviously, you've got 10 streets down there, you've got the Bramley Moore, and it felt like a match day, didn't it? Like
It did.
So, you saw people just milling around, and like it felt like a match day. And I know I've rambled on a little bit here. And perversely, the thing that made me sort of most happy was that a lad who supports Liverpool scored against us, because that made me realise like this is still Everton, and like the essence of Everton is still here. Because of course a Liverpool fan would have scored the first goal against us at our new stadium, because that's a very Everton thing to happen. And like the fact that happened in a weird sort of way made me feel like, yeah, this place has already got the Everton DNA, the Everton aura, whatever you want to call it about it. So sorry for rambling on a little bit there.
No.
But like, it just completely settled all my nerves. Like the tangible aspects of it and the intangible aspects of it. Like I said, that perverse moment, which, a Liverpool supporter holding 6 fingers up to 10,000 Evertonians, kind of made me happy in a weird sort of way.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're entirely right, or you were entirely right to have concerns or like kind of little niggling worries. It's like leaving like your childhood home that you've become so used to, so accustomed to, every little quirk and foible, and you move into something bigger and shinier, sparklier, but you just wonder whether it's quite going to be the same. I think so many Evertonians will have had that sense when they were waiting for that test event to happen. And I think, like, from what I've seen, and I spoke to people at the game and tried to just gauge what people thought. From what I've seen, like the overwhelming consensus here is that it's really good. It's really good, and it's every bit as good, if not better, than people were expecting. Going back to the point about kind of feeling like home already, we walked across as a media group from the Titanic, past the Bramley Moore pub, which had obviously changed the signage from green to blue in anticipation of the move. And you had fans, even in the cold, lining the pavements, having a drink, which was lovely to see. And Elton John's, I guess that's why I call it the Blues, blasting. And I was like, it's quite nice that you had that link between that lovely moment at the end of the derby at Goodison with the club's new home. And they're the things that are going to make match days. Like, you can take all the pictures you want of this stadium with nobody there, and it's never going to do it justice. It's when you put the people inside and you have the shared memories and the shared experiences, the match day routines, those first really important goals that go in, that it will start to feel a lot more like Everton and Everton's home. Yeah, funny, like you say, that a Liverpool supporter did that, and then kind of gave it a bit to the fans in the lower section of the South Stand. I mean, if an Everton player had done that at Anfield, they'd have been getting chased around by Curtis Jones. So and we'd have had probably 2 weeks on people crying about it on social media. I mean, there's not really been any of that. Like we were sat a row in front of. I was sat a row in front of Tony Bellew at the game yesterday, and he was kind of constantly talking throughout the game, and like quite clear to him how much it meant that one of those young Everton under-18 players would then go on to be the first goal scorer at Bramley Moore. He'll have been disappointed when he realised it was somebody that grew up supporting Liverpool, but that is Everton, as you say, Matt, and we've started as we mean to go on in the new stadium.
Yeah, absolutely. And like that South Stand, like, just to echo what you were saying on the pod last night, again, it's so steep. And I think it's like an architectural masterpiece in a way, that like we were sort of sat on row 50. And when we were getting our season tickets, me and my dad, we kind of said like we don't want to be 40 is probably the highest we wanted to go. So like we were happy to move towards the front of that South Stand, if you get what I mean. But we were sat in row 50 last night, and like you didn't feel disconnected or detached from it at all. Like you could still like hear the thud of like tackles or the ball getting booted on like a long pass, or like the players talking. And I know it'll be different when there's 50,000 people in there, but I think to have 50 rows, and like for the stand to be that big, and you still kind of feel like I feel like I like where I sit because I know this probably doesn't happen, but I like to think like if I shout encouragement or abuse, encouragement to one of our players or abuse to an opposition player, like they will hear it, and like as a fan, you can still impact that game maybe in the tiniest little way. Like,
Yeah.
and I feel like if you're sat in front 50 rows of that stand, you'll still feel like you'll be able to do that because it is close proximity. It is what we all wanted in regards to those steep-sided stands, which will keep the atmosphere in. So, yeah, so much fun about it. Like, sorry, mate, go on.
Did you walk up to the right to the back of the?
No, I didn't do that. No, I saw you did though.
It's a workout. It's a workout. I mean, I walked up with another member of the press pack, and I'm not going to name him, but he looked at his watch afterwards, and his heartbeat was 96 beats per minute. So it's not a kind of really intense workout, but it's you're blowing by the time you get to the top. I mean, kind of memories for me of a chat I'd had with Dan Meese, the stadium architect, probably about 18 months ago, where he spoke about almost wanting the south stand in particular to almost hang over the pitch and hang over the players. And I think you do really get that sense. I mean, it was so steep on the way down, Matt, that I was watching my footing and I'd not had anything to drink. Like if I'd been on the ale beforehand and I was trying to go down those steps, then I'd probably been a little bit worried. But it's remarkable what they've done with it. I was pleased. I mean, media will be very high up in the West Stand from, I think, probably the second test event on, and certainly when the Premier League season gets underway. But I was glad to get that sort of fan perspective from the south upper and experience what it's going to be like. Even just down to like I went down to the concourse at half time and it was packed, but there were no like kind of big queues that lasted long after the second half had started, because you've got so many different kiosks and so many different options to choose from. One thing I would say is that, I mean, I think like the toilets are massive, but there's like a little corner where all the toilets are, and it just feels like there's loads of empty space there. So no, that was a little bit strange, but a great experience in general, a really great night. Typical Everton lost the game, but it wasn't really about the football, let's be honest, was it? It's about being there, experiencing that, seeing what the atmosphere is going to be like. I mean, I heard Les talking about this on the other Blue Room show, the instant reaction for the game, and loved the graphics on the big screens, the sense that because of the way the roof is designed, the sound kind of reverberates around, and again, that's a design feature. So it's all about translating that, what is obviously a famous Goodison atmosphere at its best, over to Bramley Moore, and I probably don't have many concerns about that at the moment, Matt. I don't know about you, but it kind of feels like when everybody's in there, like it, and there's a big game, like that place is going to be noisy as hell.
Yeah, I like the last thing I'll say about it is like I'm encouraged that like it's going to get even better as well, because the little flourishes like you'd expect, like having Everton's logo everywhere and stuff like that, that's not there yet. I think like some of the insulation in the concourse that you mentioned there wasn't there at the back by that big window, because you go and stand over there and you could feel the cold air rushing up. And just one other thing I quite liked, very childish, that on that big back window, there's still quite a lot of dust, obviously, because they're still doing work down there. And obviously some mischievous kids or adults even had written "Copite to Gobshite" in the dust on the back window. So a nice touch. Did you have a toffee donut, Paddy? You're on mute.
Yeah, you can tell I'm tired again, can't you? It didn't, like, all the food was laid out for us when we got there, and we had a great presentation, and we tried loads of different stuff. I'm kind of really impressed with it all. They brought the toffee donuts out to show us, but it was all a big tease. We didn't actually get one. So I mean, I was that if there was any disappointment in the night for me, Matt, apart from just being freezing, it was that. I didn't get a toffee donut. They look great though.
They were good. I was very hesitant to get one to begin with, and then I think Mosey actually slagged them off on the podcast, but we got one going out, and they were great. Yeah, I did have blue mouth when I got home and brushed my teeth though. So yeah, one of them. A lot of blue food colouring going into them. But yeah, we'll leave the stadium chat there anyway, because yeah, amazing. We'll do loads on it, I'm sure, over the next few months. But get excited if you're a Blue, and if you've got doubts on it, trust me, from somebody who was doubtful and sceptical about this, they will probably be erased when you see it for the first time. Actual football, Paddy. Let's talk about Palace on Saturday. Do you know what? Should we just talk about Betto and the big man? Because played so much, and I know you spoke to him after the game, and I'm interested to see what he was like and his mood and stuff. But I just didn't think he had the performance like that in him. And I know he's been good over the last few weeks, and he's obviously scored goals. And I think we sort of spoke a few weeks ago, didn't we, about how that Leicester game is maybe like a transition from him being like a joke, like a bit of a running joke, into like an actual Premier League player. And it felt like the shift had changed a little bit. Even after that, I didn't think I'd see him play like he did on Saturday. And I was trying to think like which Everton players he reminded me of, because there's a few times in the game where I was like, I'm sure I've seen this before. But it sort of felt like, this is going to sound mad, it sort of felt like all the strikers we've had over the years who have not been quite good enough or not quite made it, the best bits of their game, he kind of all put together in a performance at the weekend, if you get what I mean. So we had like the work rate of Stracqualursi, for example. He had like the hold-up play and backing into of like an Anichebe. He's got like the personality and like the affability of someone like Nias, who the fans took to as well. And just like all these little bits of like Everton strikers past who didn't quite make it. And he just needs to put it all together with the gloss on top of it all, which is this lad can finish as well. And I think his goal at the weekend was so impressive in the sense that as that ball gets passed through to him, I think you're not only thinking he's going to score here, but you can almost see exactly what touch he's going to take and what finish he's going to take. And I was just so surprised and so delighted, and I'm made up to be wrong about him because I've slated him on these podcasts like the last year or so. And I think he elevated like my expectations of him and what I thought he was capable of a lot on Saturday, even after scoring the derby and scoring 2 against Leicester.
Yeah, I think this was his best all-round performance for Everton. I know maybe there's other games, Leicester, for example, where he scored 2 and finished really well. But to me, he did just about everything in this performance. Not only did he take his goal very well, but I thought he occupied both central defenders. His hold-up play at times was much better for me. His link play. And you're starting to see what happens when somebody like him is given a run, like a proper run in the team, and they don't have to just come off the bench in kind of 15, 20-minute spurts and look to kind of make an impression where they can. I think having a sustained run, knowing you're the number 9 for the next however many months, and you have the confidence of the manager and players is a big thing. I also think, though, you've got a situation where it's quite clear that he's working hard on his game. The coaching staff are working hard on his game. Loads of people will have seen this now, but he basically tells us in the mix zone afterwards that he does what he calls special training with Moyes' staff, and it's all about hold-up play. They still do finishing drills, of course, but it's kind of 1 touch, 2 touch, lay the ball off, all that kind of stuff. And for the first time in probably a while, you could see that all-round game coming together. I probably shouldn't say this as a journalist, Matt, but I've rarely wanted an Everton player to succeed as much as I do with him, because he's so affable. It clearly matters so much to him, and I really don't think that's an act, having spoken to him as much as I have done now. That you do want it to go his way. Like he's moved beyond that. He's really likable and he runs around loads. To he does all that stuff, has become a bit of a cult hero, but is also finishing all his chances. And probably the best compliment you can pay him is the thing you've alluded to there. Like when he gets in those positions now, you expect him to score goals. I mean, look at his, if anybody interested in stats, look at his goal return versus like the quality of chances he's getting. And unlike Calvert-Lewin, who performs below expectation there, Betto right now is far above expectation. So like one of those lovely scenarios, Matt, where you can just go through and go, so many people deserve credit for this. Probably chiefly Betto himself, but Moyes and his staff. You probably then have to go back to recruitment personnel and the director of football, who, I mean, this is kind of pretty far down the line with Betto, and maybe in part by chance, but that looks a better piece of business now than it did even a month ago. All these people coming together with Charlie Alcaraz and the people that are James Garner, the people that are setting up his goals, and really giving Everton an extra dimension. And I thought, like, my problem with Dyche's football was that, like, Everton would defend, and sometimes they'd defend really well, but they seemingly had no way of breaking out at their worst. Like, the counter-attacks were dreadful and looked like they just hadn't been designed and nobody knew what they were doing. Look at the move that leads to Beto's first goal and how quickly Everton go from A to B. It's all, like, super sharp, well executed, well finished. And with Alcaraz and Betto on the pitch, they really did, and Lindstrom, to be fair, they really did have that threat. So, like, it's like Moyes has taken all the best bits of Dyche ball and just added a bit round the fringes to get them where they are right now. A lot of chat about where Everton deserve to be. They deserve to be where they are right now, based on results and performances. They're doing really well.
It's almost like maybe not to quite the same spectacular extent, but it's almost like the inverse of what happened with Martinez following Moyes, isn't it? Like, Martinez came in and benefited from some solid defensive foundations, added a few more ideas and fresh voice in attack, and got them playing a different way. And then, obviously, in the end, those foundations gradually crumbled, and the team did. But, like, Moyes is sort of doing what Martinez did with his old team, isn't he? Like, he's obviously a bit more of a progressive manager than Dyche, and wants to play it in a bit of a different way. But that structure and that discipline is still there. But I think you're so right about the counter attacks as well, and the way in which we, like, because under Dyche at times, certainly when we had games where we had such a little amount of the ball, we would be penned in constantly, and we wouldn't be able to ever, like, find, like, a release from that pressure. But against Palace, like, in the second half, I think we have 3 good counter attacks. Obviously, before we score, like, there's the one where Lindstrom has a shot which is saved. There's the one where Betto ultimately has a shot which Henderson saves as well. I think there's one more which are missing. But certainly in the second half, even though they were the dominant side when they came out after half time, like, every now and then we just, like, throw a bit of a jab back. Yeah. And I think that just kept Palace back on their, on their toes a little bit. It meant, like, they couldn't push the fullbacks right the way forward and push the midfield right on, because they knew that if we did get the ball and obviously the goals, the winning goal ultimately comes from the from a set piece, which is recycled. But yeah, I just thought he was so good, Beto, and, like, I'm excited to see what comes next now, because clearly he's somebody who's, like you said, he's willing to learn. He's a hard trainer, and he's reaping the benefits of that now. And just a word on Alcaraz as well, Paddy. You still mentioned the first goal there. I think really impressive the way in which he sort of was able to carry the ball and then pick the pass. Because I think so often, if you look at play, don't want to slag the core off by any means, but you've seen him in that position so many times where he's got the ball, been able to do the first bit, which is drive forward and carry the ball. But so often the pass has been short or overhit, or he's gone to take the man on himself, and it's not quite worked out. But Alcaraz, like, I think he looked on Saturday kind of what was billed to us, a player who maybe is a little bit raw in possession at times, maybe doesn't always pick the right pass, but when he's got space to run into in the final third, or the ball drops him in the box, that he is capable of producing those moments.
Yeah, I mean, you can see there's real quality there, certainly in the weight of the pass for Beto's first, and some of his carrying from midfield. I mean, there's a really nice moment in the first half, and look, this is super ambitious of him to try the shot in the end, but the touch to bring Beto's flicked header down and move in one fluid motion inside the defender, it was very, very similar to what Mitoma did for Brighton and against Chelsea recently too. So he is kind of what we expected. He is that kind of fighter, number 10 type. He'll do all the running, but probably has a bit more end product. Well, certainly has a bit more end product than somebody like Decore. I thought it took a little bit of time for the team collectively, and perhaps this was tiredness, because I think what we have to realise is that Wednesday will have really taken it out of those players. But I did think there was a bit of time in the first half in particular where first of all, it felt a bit limp. If it looked like they were below par, like physically and mentally, but also were maybe those elements of balance between the different thirds weren't quite right. Particularly, I would say Palace progressing the ball from their defence into midfield, and maybe you do sacrifice a little bit of understanding right now when Decore doesn't play in that number 10 role. So if there's a drawback at the moment, maybe it's that, but certainly like real quality in the final third. And again, like the option slash obligation to buy, depending on how you look at it, is 15 million euros. I think that's a pretty good deal for a 22, 23-year-old who's played in the Premier League before, played in other leagues, and has been on the verge of Argentina call-up. If he continues in anything like this vein, that's going to be a real snip come the end of the season.
Just one more point on this game and Alcaraz. And I don't know if you know the answer to this, but why, as an Argentina, not international, but someone who's called up to the squad, and obviously I imagine someone who would have idolised Messi growing up, what is he doing the Ronaldo celebration for?
Well, it's interesting you asked that, Matt, because one of the things we did before Monday's game was go and interview Charlie Alcaraz at the hotel as part of Everton's kind of pre-match plan. And he was specifically asked about that. I can't give you the answer because it's okay. Embargoed, but fair to say other people have picked up on this as well. I mean, he's Argentinian, so why is he doing that?
If you're getting a bollocking off Messi, he gets called up to the next squad.
Possibly you need to do the Messi celebration next time.
Well, I don't even know what that is, but you know, just I mean, if you're gonna not do one, if you're gonna, you know, if you're in Argentina, I just thought it was interesting. That's all. But
it was. But I mean, I suppose like Cristiano Ronaldo is still a reference point for loads of players around the world, and he'll have grown up probably watching him in the Premier League and then La Liga as well. Yeah, that was funny, obviously, and I loved how much how much it clearly meant to him. Like he's over when he scores, he's over there pounding the badge, and I think he kind of did a little heart sign to the away end again at full time. One game in, he's got his own one start in, he's got his own song. I mean, like how many years have we had Calvert-Lewin now at Everton, where he's just, apart from the occasional shout, there's not really been much for Dominic. Perhaps that's to do with his surname and how difficult it is to get into a song. But Alcaraz, almost as I kind of expected he would, to be honest, Matt, almost immediately has forged that connection with the fans, and it just feels a whole load better in general, doesn't it? That the manager and the fans, manager and the players with each other. Like we were waiting around for Betto in the cold for probably about an hour after the final whistle, and he's still getting kind of high fives and hugs from members of staff and teammates. You've got Harrison and Alcaraz speaking in Spanish to each other, and
I love that video so much. It was fantastic.
Harrison really helping Alcaraz behind the scenes, and it just feels like a much more comfortable place. And winning, I think, breeds some of that confidence and some of that feel-good factor. But I think the change of managers helped. Like sometimes we just need a bit of a reset, I think, and people get tired, people get a bit bored and a bit edgy, and something new comes in and tweaks are made. And we've spoken about this before. I don't think it's a sea change from Dyche. It's like some of Dyche's principles with other things around and subtle tweaks. Jake O'Brien in a back three in possession and a bit using the ball a bit more and a bit more direct with the counter-attacks, getting some more support to the striker. These really savvy changes, but it feels like they've made the world a difference. And I don't know, it feels like a really happy camp at the moment, Matt.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like the reason why I loved the Harrison stuff is just like for him, like it's just a player who's obviously been on the periphery a lot. You know, just talk about maybe sending him back to people keen to send him back to Leeds, just get another loan space in January. And like, I know we sort of laugh at it, but like the fact that he's sort of come in and has got like this new responsibility, like he's gonna feel valued again, isn't he? Like, you know, he's helping somebody else settle in. Like it's clear, like you know, when Beto scored, him and like he went over to Alcaraz and was sort of Obviously, when Alcaraz scored, Harrison's there as well. You know, I think he's doing like a little sort of cigar celebration with him, isn't he? So I don't know what that is. Somebody sort of doing on the training ground or whatever. But like just little moments like that. I think when you win, you really start to pick up on and are absolutely fantastic. So yeah. I mean, yeah, long may it continue. And God, yeah, United are due an absolute beating on Saturday from us. So hopefully we can deliver on that. Just a few minutes, Paddy. We ran long today. Just a few minutes to go before we do our squad number to finish off. What's the quickly talk about Kevin Thelwell? And to be honest, like this conversation would have been a lot different based on a month ago. If you're looking at players like Betto and Jake O'Brien and Lindstrom and saying, you know, what on earth was he doing bringing these lads to the football club? But they're all starting to come good, show the worth a little bit. But you wrote a piece sort of this week, sort of looking at Kevin Thelwell and his situation. And listen, we've got weeks coming up where there's not going to be any games. So I'm sure we can dig into this in a bit more detail. But for anyone who's not seen it, can you just give them a bit of an overview on what the situation is surrounding him at the moment? Because I know obviously he's done an interview which we spoke about a little bit a couple of weeks ago. And also there was some speculation linking Everton with a move for David Weir, potentially taking over from Kevin Thelwell in the summer. So there's been a bit of buzz around it, hasn't there?
There definitely has been, and probably for some time, truth be told, purely because Thelwell's out of contract still at the end of the season, and Everton have got new owners and a new manager. So I think like very quickly after the transfer window finishes in January, we move on to these big burning questions at Everton. We build it as kind of one of Everton's great unanswered questions. Right now, who's going to be director of football next season? Are they going to have a director of football next season? And of course, who's going to be CEO as well? Because the search is still ongoing for that person. Thelwell's a really interesting topic because I think you could get like 100 Evertonians in the room and ask them, what do you think of the job he's done? And you'd probably get quite a decent split. I'd have thought he's definitely divided opinion. But the aim of my piece certainly was to just shed a light in as thorough a way as possible on the 3 years, like what's been going on. Some of the players they've been in for but missed out on for various reasons. Some of the challenges behind the scenes, of course, because there have been so many. And I where I got to with it at the end, Matt, and again, people are entitled to have their own opinion. Where I got to at the end with it was, there's no resolution yet. I don't even think at this stage we should necessarily 100% be focused on definitely being a director of football at Everton next season. I mean, like, if Thelwell were to leave, does that necessarily mean there's going to be a director of football? I wouldn't say so. Not right now. I think there's a lot to resolve there. But if he were to go at the end of the season, then I think at the very least, like, he'd be in that Dyche category for me of, like, history will probably look back quite fondly on his tenure in terms of just how he helped Everton get through by hook or by crook. And I suppose the next question then, if you're throwing this on a bit, is, well, he's worked in these very specific circumstances here, like no money about and having to sell key players for running costs and PSR and everything else. What would he and his recruitment team and everybody else be like with more money? And that's ultimately going to be the question now for the Friedkin group in particular. It's, are they, Thelwell and his lot, the right people now to manage more money and to handle the next stage of this rebuild? I mean, I've been on record on this podcast and elsewhere saying, like, I think this needs to be sorted sooner rather than later, and whether that's Thelwell or not, to be honest, because Everton have got 13 players out of contract in the summer, and they're going to have to plan a rebuild quite extensively. And I think that needs to start yesterday, really, that planning. Who gets new contracts, who stays, who goes, and then kind of bringing in what we would expect to be a whole raft of new players. So kind of needs clarity on that. But I see the two jobs very much linked, CEO and director of football. I think in an ideal world, you have your CEO in situ to almost preside over what is going to happen everybody needs to be on the same page. CEO, director, football manager. There, like those key pillars need to be in place there early, and the most key is probably CEO. So let's see how it goes. There's no definitive answer yet, but like I say, the aim of the piece was more just to kind of shine a light on the job that's done over 3 years. And let's be honest, people can make their minds up when they read it. They've made their minds up on A, the job he's done, and B, whether he deserves a new deal.
Yeah, a massive decision, isn't it? I suppose, and yeah, I don't know whether the result, but maybe that's something we can look at in a bit more detail over the coming weeks. But no, good stuff. Good to get a steer on where we are with that. Squad numbers this week, Paddy, number 29. Oh, we've got a big name in here. I'll rattle through some of them. Have you got any favourites from this list this week? You're on mute again. Have you got brain freeze?
I've got a complete head freeze, I think, at the moment. I've not actually had a look at them, so I'm coming to this.
I'll rattle them out. Okay. Don't stop me here because there's one which is fantastic. So obviously we've got Lindstrom at the moment. Ruben Vinagre. He was 29, 22, 23. Umar Niasse, who wore every shirt number on the list. I think we've established now. Calvert-Lewin, early days DCL, was between 16, 17 and 18, 19. He had 29. And then we had Luke Garbett, João Silva, and in 2007 to 2008, none other than Paddy Boyle.
Is that
Paddy Boyle wore the number 29.
Is that the big name?
That is the big name. Before him, it was James Vaughan, Kevin McLeod, Danny Cads, and Tony Grant. But Paddy Boyle,
yeah,
wow,
no relation, of course.
After leaving Everton, he went on to play for Crewe, Dunfermline, Idrionians, Ayr United, Peterhead United, Kelty Hearts, and Dumbarton. So there you go. Wow.
Yeah. Who do you want to speak about, Matt?
I thought you'd be more blown away than.
I mean, I was aware. I think last week I was aware that was going to crop up this week.
Okay.
And I was thinking about how I should approach it in terms of speaking about this lad who, again, he was obviously on the periphery of the Everton squad, but he never came through. Fullback who had a pretty decent career, all told, particularly in his native Scotland. But what I realised very quickly, Matt, was that I didn't have an awful lot more than that to say about it.
Just a similar name, isn't it?
It is a similar name, and
a few left backs in there. Vinagre, Garbett. I think Kevin McLeod the left back as well.
Kevin McLeod was a left winger.
Left winger. Okay.
Kevin McLeod was a winger predominantly. Again, had a decent career, didn't he? After coming through what was then the reserves. I mean, you're right. Luke Garbett.
Garbett as well.
Remember Garbett's performance against Wolfsburg in the 4-1?
I was there, Paddy.
At Goodison.
Oh, okay. I was at that one as well. But the away one was arguably colder than last night.
But the away one was a really memorable European away, and it's the kind of night. If you just said to me, Everton can have this again, like I'd just be so happy with that. Particularly as a reporter going to Germany and France and all these different places, like they obviously did under Moyes and Martinez. Garbett's performance in the home game against Wolfsburg, I think, was one where I was like, this lad looks like a real prospect.
Did he play in that? Sure, didn't Bain score in that game?
No, I think Garbett played it.
Okay, we'll have to have a look back.
I'm glad you flagged this, Matt, because if I'm wrong, then it's going to need editing, and we'll
we'll leave it in. People are nice to us on this podcast. We don't get stick, so I'm sure people will gently point out any mistakes we make.
In the process of Googling Everton 4 Wolves, was it 4-1 in the game?
4-1, yeah.
Wolfsburg had a ridiculous team at the time because like Ricardo Rodriguez scored a free kick in the game, and you had people like Kevin De Bruyne. Was Bas Dost up front for them in some of those?
Bentner played, wasn't it Bentner?
Might have been.
Surely because Bentner played for them.
But apart from Bentner, they had some very good players, basically.
Did you say Perisic? I think he was there, wasn't he? Like Luis Gustavo as well.
It's like if you look through that team, it was really, really good. And Everton
Baines did play.
Everton gave them a hiding. I've got an image of Luke Garbett racing from deep and crossing the ball, but maybe it was Baines.
I think you might be thinking of the away game because he was good and he wasn't in the squad for the home one. So
Well, so I'm definitely wrong then in that case.
Yeah,
but he was Garbutt, like he did have real potential, and we went on loan to Fulham and picked up. He had a tough few games, and then picked up an injury, and I don't think he ever completely recovered. But like he was very technical as a left back, and obviously they'd signed him, I think, somewhat controversially from Leeds for a decent fee when he was around 15, 16. Like very, very technical, but obviously never made it, and then had the indignity of being the name on everybody's lips when Carlo Ancelotti is speaking and raises his eyebrows and who's Luke Garbutt.
Ancelotti forgot about him, and so did you as well in the Wolfsburg game. So that's two high-profile Everton figures who've forgotten about him now. So.
Mine was better than Carlo's in the sense that, like, I knew who he was, and I manifested him into a very good Everton performance. That was how highly I rated his performances at the time. Whereas Carlo just went, I don't know who this lad is.
This is some covering. This is some covering of your back now. But listen, Luke, if you're listening, I'll never forget you, mate. I'll never forget that performance in Wolfsburg because it was boss. I had a great time.
Right. I interviewed him a few times. He was always good value. And spoke about those times. Times well. Who else do we have in there?
Salford now, isn't he?
He's at Salford. He played against Everton in the pre-season friendly that Everton somehow lost.
Good stuff.
As did Conor McElhenney, who people remember from his very brief time at Everton and the fact that he very nearly scored an absolute belter at the Emirates.
Yeah, that was the day game Van Persie scored the one the goal. I was at that as well.
Coming on late in that game.
What could it be?
So yeah, a succession of Everton kind of nearly men at left back in there, and of course Nias as well as a striker who was very, very likable, and if we're being fair to him, made a big telling contribution towards the end of the time. Last I heard of him, Matt, and things will have moved on since then. Last I heard of him, he was often playing in South Manchester David Lloyd games. Going around, I think it was like Chorlton and Didsbury FC, and he obviously bounced out of various clubs, Macclesfield and a few others. But like this is why I felt a bit sorry calling Betto a cult hero earlier, because like I think Betto is a much better player than Nias, but they both had that instant rapport with the fans and that thing you get with the fan base where you really have a will to see somebody succeed. So yeah, fond memories of Nias, despite how limited, of course, he was.
Yeah, definitely. He was he gave heart and soul, didn't he, in the end to the football club, albeit, like I said, maybe question that Russian Player of the Year award he won all those years ago. But let's not go down that rabbit hole. But we'll wrap it up there anyway. As ever, we are sponsored by the Bridewell. If you watch us on YouTube, do leave us a comment. Do hit the subscribe button. Do hit like. Let us know your thoughts on the ground, on the win on Saturday, on Betto, on Kevin Thelwell, on anything else. And the same goes if you're listening on Spotify or on iTunes. You can leave us a comment on there as well. And please do leave us a 5-star review. Everton are great at the moment. We've got a boss new ground. Leave us a 5-star review. Let's be nice to me and Paddy, because these things all help, as we say. We'll be back next week for Byline 30, reflecting on the Manchester United game, what is hopefully an overdue win against that lot. Have a great week. Up the Toffees. We'll speak to you soon.